So this is a left field name, and I do not expect this person to be fired, but I do think, and I also really like them. So I think you talked myself out of it
Enough
already.
caveats.
Yeah. So Frank Reich.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely on my list.
I had him
Okay.
down. And that has as much to do with Jim Irsay's like bizarre postseason comments where out of nowhere he was like, "Yeah, I considered firing everyone." It's like, whoa. That wasn't on any. That wasn't on the radar. It was
just
Carson
stood outside
Wentz.
a private plane rambling to a camera where you couldn't really hear what he was saying, but maybe that's for the best.
Like, I get that you pin almost all of that collapse at the end of the season onto Carson Wentz, right? But I feel like that, when are we going to acknowledge that Reich also has a lot of responsibility for what happened there as well? Because, he was the guy that brought him in. He was the guy that vouched for him. He was the guy that sort of talked about how he was his like second son. I just think that there have always been these sort of slightly tumultuous stretches during a Colts season that he's been at the helm at, and I can't really work out why, because I think he's an excellent leader of men. I think he's a really good coach. I think it's a great front office with Chris Ballard and Ed Dodds. They've got good players. You go through that roster and you look at, position by position. Generally, it's full of really good players or really good under the radar players. They've always found good guys that they can draft. Where that there is a disconnect somewhere. Maybe that's ownership. And I feel like he's almost been bailed out by the Matt Ryan trade. But at some point, the rubber's got to meet the road with Frank Reich, and they've got to get a decent push into the playoffs, because it's a playoff team that's not getting into the playoffs.
The defense took a big drop off as well last year, despite having excellent talent at every level. And okay, Eberflus is now gone and actually gone and got himself a head coaching job despite his bad second half of the year last year. You've got to rely on both sides of the ball to do well. And so Gus Bradley has to come in and hit the ground running as well. And he should do with the players they've got on that side of the ball. Can't see why he wouldn't.
Say that, but Gus Bradley's defenses have been a horror show for 6 years now. He just has refused to move at the times of the game. I mean, you can go through every single time the Chiefs look like they're in trouble. They played a Gus Bradley defense and they got right back on track. They would just hang 40 on him, and it was teaching tape of how to shred cover three. Just one after last year. Teams figured out Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's playing too deep. Gus Bradley, bleep that. I'm doing cover three and I'm rolling strong. And there goes the ball flying past everyone's head, and Patrick Mahomes is dropping 45 on his head 2 out of 3 weeks. So I don't know. I mean, the Eberflus thing is mad because they were never that good under him, really. I mean, the style they played, it was so conservative and restrictive that they kind of juiced their own figures to help themselves out in terms of the numerical department. I think they ended up finishing like 8th in defensive efficiency anyway last year, but they looked bad for large stretches at the second half of the year. And they rely so much on turnover luck. And Darius Leonard is on pace to be the greatest forced fumbler in the history of the game. And can that just continue year after year after year? He is a really special player, but that is just not a skill that traditionally carries over unless you're Peanut Tillman and you create a new brand of doing this thing, which he is not. So, yeah, that would be a concerning one for me with him. As we mentioned, Irsay is going to be looking for any excuse because he's just that kind of owner. And they've done move after move at the quarterback spot. And the next one you would just imagine would be changing the coach for coach's sake, even though I just stick with him. I would stick with him. I'd try and find a better defensive coordinator. That would be my long-term plan.
The issue for me, I think, and you go through that roster and you kind of feel like quarterback, they're in decent hands with Matt Ryan, running back obviously with Jonathan Taylor, but they picked up CJ Verdell, they drafted Devonta Price, Naeem Hines is there. Wide receiver is a bit of an issue. Alec Pierce has been really good apparently the first couple of days, but it is mini camp in terms of rookie mini camp, obviously alongside Michael Pittman. Tight ends are fine. There's a question mark about left tackle. Is Bernard Ryman going to play there? And then defensively, you look at that defensive line, and DeForest Buckner, you got Yannick Ngakoue, who they did the Rocky Sin trade with, Dayo Odeyingbo, who I really liked out of Vanderbilt, Kwity Paye, obviously the first round of last year. Linebackers are strong, apart from Darius Leonard. Bobby Okereke, or Okere, however he wants to pronounce his name this week. He's like Andy Cole. The question for me is cornerback, actually, and what can they get out of Stephon Gilmore? Because Kenny Moore is a great slot guy, but in terms of outside corners, I like the safeties. I think Julian Blackman's a really good player. But if they can get a tune out of Stephon Gilmore, then
Gilmore was excellent in Carolina last year, and they played him inside a lot, and they played him inside and off, which is interesting, and absolutely nothing like he's ever played before. And I'm guessing because he was breathing heavily for the first 6 weeks, because I think he'd been in Miami for 12 weeks having a good old time. So
Yeah.
That's interesting because he just does not really fit the Gus Bradley MO. So I have no idea where they're going to line him up. But if they can get even the Carolina level out of him, that is a huge move for them. If they can somehow get anywhere near the Patriots one, then that is something pretty special. I just don't think that defensive line's very good. I think Buckner's good, but you can double someone inside, and Gakwe is not a good player. He's a name player. He doesn't play very well. And they only brought him in because of he's Gus Bradley's guy, and they run such a specific scheme. And the fact that they are so in on the Gus Bradley experience in 2022 is the thing that would worry me. That was something the head coach has decided he wants to do. As you mentioned, Si, him and Ballard work together on the personnel stuff. So they've clearly decided they're going with that style of defense, and that's just not going to work in 2022.
Yeah, and what you're asking for on that defensive line as well is those two, the first and second round pick from last year that I mentioned, Ollie, Ingbo, and Pay, to really step up and have big seasons. I mean, 4 sacks for Quickie Pay last year. I'm not even sure how many Deo had, half a sack last year. So you're expecting 4.5 sacks to go up to the close to the 20s, aren't you? And that's a hell of a leap for 2 players.